Hello everyone, I am here to talk to you about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I saw it last Thursday, and it was amazing. And for those of you that are wondering, I am recording this after the weekend, after I've had a little bit of time to think about it. I just finished a stream where I was streaming Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game, just talking to people about some things. We didn't get into spoilers, but now is the time I'm going to get into spoilers with you. So if you haven't seen it yet still, this might not be the video for you. Go see it first is what I would recommend before we talk about this stuff. But also, if you are a lover of spoilers, even before you go to movies, then you are welcome here. Stick around with us. Let's talk about some things. First things first, I wanted to talk about Rocket's origin in this movie. I really love this origin a lot. I actually think it's one of the strongest, versions of this story that I've had. It was really interesting because when they said they were going to do the High Evolutionary in this movie, I was like, how will that make sense? And I was like, oh boy, High Evolutionary, getting involved with everyone. And I mean, this is me also coming from comics, where in the comics, the High Evolutionary is kind of ends up being the bad guy behind everything. And you're just kind of like, oh, this is some weird science stuff, the High Evolutionary. And usually, I would say like 1 out of 3 times, maybe, you're right. And it is the High Evolutionary. So I just have a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth from that kind of storytelling, I guess, sometimes in the comics, which it's comics, so I can accept it. But at the same time, it becomes a little old hat sometimes. And I'm just like, oh, here we go again. And I think the other thing is that it's more like the High Evolutionary is kind of put in positions where it's just to like explain something weird, as opposed to it feeling like the High Evolutionary actually has a genuine motivation. In this movie, I don't know what his motivation really is, but I feel he has a motivation. It feels powerful. This is a huge thing that a lot of people are also talking about right now with the High Evolutionary, is how much they love this villain and love to hate this villain more specifically. I would agree with that. This is one of the most despicable villains we've seen in a long time, and it is very powerful. Not maybe the only one that has had motivation, though, I would say. I would say in Shang-Chi, when Wu has some pretty strong motivations, and even though he's not the direct villain in that, he is kind of like the villain for most of the movie. And he definitely is a character that makes the bad choices in the movie. Even though, like I said, it's not necessarily because he wants to be a bad guy. It's more misguided. But even misguided stuff, I think, is really powerful for motivation, because we all understand what it's like to think that we're justified. And we also understand seeing the other side of that, where like somebody else comes in and is like, yeah, but you're being ridiculous. But you're like, yeah, but to me, I'm justified. High Evolutionary doesn't really have a lot of justifications, I would say, that we get behind. We don't really get to know, like, why does he do these things? What was his childhood like? Or anything like that. The most that we get to know about him is that he basically sees himself as God and wants to become God, and believes that he has to do that because there is no God. Very creepy stuff. So Chakudi Owuji is the person that plays the High Evolutionary, and a lot of people have actually been calling for Kang to be recast here and explain it as the High Evolutionary was just another version of Kang, which could make sense. I'm still not ready to say goodbye to Jonathan Majors. I don't know. I think we have to see how this case goes and see what happens. A lot of people jumping on this bandwagon, and I have been following Jonathan Majors' work for the last few years and watched him come up, and he is very talented. So it would be, I think, really sad if we had to say goodbye to Jonathan Majors. So I'm really hoping that isn't what happens, but I also understand that people have already kind of turned. So even though we haven't gone to trial yet or heard anything in regards to this case against him, a lot of people have already made up their mind, it seems. And that being said, I think Chukwudi Iwuji is a awesome actor, so I'm not trying to take that away from him at all, and he was amazing as the High Evolutionary. But I just would want to see, I don't know, I would like both of them to be in the MCU, if that's possible. Obviously, at the end of this movie, not so much possible unless the High Evolutionary, I don't know, cloned himself. However, that does sound like something the High Evolutionary would do. So I think if we really wanted to bring this villain back, we still could. I think the other thing is that this is an actor that I also really love. I think that one of the first things that I really took note of him in was Peacemaker, where he's also amazing. Also doesn't really make it in that show. Spoilers for Peacemaker, but I think that's fine. It's season 1 has been out for a while. But yeah, he is amazing in that as well. And the High Evolutionary was definitely a highlight of the film for me as well. Very, very cool. What I really loved about this film, and I kind of touched on it a little bit in my spoiler-free review, but is a lot of the team-up moments. One of my favorite things about this movie was that it really gave me a new appreciation for Mantis. I already really loved Mantis since Volume 2, but Volume 3, I think we get to see the power of her as a support character and also the strength of her, and it's really... Oh, this movie is so good because every character has had their own arc throughout the entire movie, and we really get to see them come to fruition. And I think for Mantis, it's doing things for herself and not following anybody's orders or in anybody's footsteps, and she basically says as much at the end of the movie. Drax also has a fantastic story arc as well, with him going from being this guy that wants vengeance to acknowledging that, like, vengeance isn't really what he's about. Like, he's about, like, being a dad, and, like, that is so heartbreaking when I feel like that means Drax's story is probably, like, completely coming to an end, which means we'll never get to see him reunited with his daughter. Like, you know, in the comics, his daughter is still alive, and I was kind of holding out hope that maybe somehow she had survived and that we would get to see Moondragon and get to see her and her dad reunited. Sadly, I don't think that will ever happen. The question that we kind of talked about at the end of our spoiler-free review is there a future for Guardians of the Galaxy? Something that I was talking to Uptown Duck about in that video, and I personally do think we could see a transition into a new team, bring in a new director, do all that stuff. It does bum me out that James Gunn has finished his trilogy, but at the same time, I think this was a perfect send-off for the Guardians. This is really a trilogy that is pretty flawless for me. A lot of people are saying that this trilogy has a great ramp up to that final part where it's almost like each movie it gets better. For me, I think Volume 2 is still one of my favorites. I don't know if Volume 3 topped Volume 2 for me. I mean, Mary Poppins, y'all. I don't know. I love how Yondu also came back. Like, we literally got Michael Rooker for like 2 seconds or something. Like, he's barely in this movie, but he came back and did the whole makeup and did everything to do this, which I think is really amazing. Karen Gillan is amazing in this. Karen Gillan, okay, so one of my favorite acting moments in the entire movie for me was Karen Gillan near the beginning of the movie, after Star-Lord has, you know, been drinking, and Karen Gillan has to come and carry him out as Nebula, and Nebula puts Star-Lord to sleep, and he grabs her arm and basically calls her Gamora, and then says that he loves her. The look, it's not even words, it's just the look. And like, with her full makeup on and everything, Karen Gillan just looks at him with this whole story in her eyes, her very dark eyes, where she says, with her eyes, she doesn't say anything actually, like, I feel for you and I kind of pity you, but also you bringing up my sister like reminds me of what I've lost. And also the wisdom in Nebula in being this person that acknowledges, because even later when we find out that Gamora from sort of the past, who's living now in the 616, or not 616, the Earth 199999 reality, the MCU, who came from the past in the MCU, is living there, and Nebula has known about this and been in contact with her, that they are still sisters, obviously. Nothing takes that away from them, but Nebula acknowledges that this is not the same Gamora that they lost. And Star-Lord has to come to terms with that. And there's also an amazing scene between Zoe Saldana and Chris Pratt where they have this fight, and Star-Lord is basically saying to Gamora, you know, like, oh, this isn't who you are, like, I knew you, like, we used to be together, and he's just not getting it that, like, this Gamora is not the same Gamora, and definitely does not appreciate any of his advances. He does eventually get that, but in this fight, she calls him out for needing Gamora so much, and basically says, like, what's so broken in you that you can't accept that I'm not that person and that that person is gone? Like, that you need someone so badly that you can't just, like, be yourself. I don't know. There was something in that, and this idea of codependence, this little theme, especially for Star-Lord, of codependence that has been building this entire time, that it's like, this was like the thing where it's like, oh yeah, like, that is completely who Star-Lord is, and like connect the dots. And it was heart-wrenching to watch that scene. It was such a powerful scene, so well done. And there's so many moments in this that have that, and so many fun moments where you can tell everyone on set was probably having like the best time. And I think, to me, that's also part of what makes movies magic, is like when you get to see people like enjoying what they do. I'm gonna miss everybody. I'm gonna miss Cosmo. I'm gonna miss Groot. I'm gonna miss Rocket. I'm gonna miss Star-Lord. I'm gonna miss Gamora. I'm gonna miss Nebula. I'm gonna miss Drax. I'm gonna miss Mantis. I'm gonna miss everyone. And it's really sad. I'm really sad that it's over. I need to go see it again because I don't want it to be over. So I'm thinking I'll probably try to see it at least one more time, if not a couple more times in theaters, because until the last time I see it in the theaters, it's not really over. And then after that, it is over, but I can always watch everything back on DVDs. So, haha, take that. Guardians will always live on in my heart. That's basically, I think, all I really have to say about this. Yeah, lots of amazing acting moments, just a powerful film overall. Once again, an amazing soundtrack, and Rocket playing that iconic tune from Volume 1 at the end of the movie really got me. I cried a lot during this. The animals. As I was saying before, this made me kind of want to maybe be vegetarian. If I watch it a few more times, it might happen. I don't know. This movie was pretty brutal. It went to some really dark places, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate that it took us there while still giving us a happy ending, because I really was ready for James Gunn and the whole creative team to break my heart and kill everyone in this movie. But fortunately, that is not what happened. So, yay, we get a happy ending. Star-Lord will obviously return, so I'm interested to see where that goes next. Okay, one more moment before we go. But I mean, there's so many good moments in this movie, and that's how you know it's a good movie. When I can think of like 20 moments that I loved or more in a film, that's a good sign. At the end, when Star-Lord goes home to see his grandpa and his grandpa sees him, just the look, that scene is like amazing. And the look on his grandfather's face. Who plays his grandpa? Grandpa Quill? Greg Henry. Wow, he's really been in everything. What a wild career he's had. But Greg Henry, who appears in the film as his grandpa, is phenomenal. Like, this reaction shot that he gets of Peter, and he like reaches for his glasses because you can tell he's like frazzled, and he's like, oh my gosh, like, is that my grandson? That can't be possible. I haven't seen him in years. And then when he sees him, and Star-Lord is so scared because he's realizing, I've been running all this time and I do need to go home, but like, what will I be going home to? Like, that's scary to not know. And like, will my grandpa even want to see me after I left? And the last time I saw him, you know, we said some things. He was upset with me. And his grandpa just looks at him and he's like, oh, it's gonna make me cry. And he's like, oh my gosh, Pete? And he's so happy to see him. It's just like, you just see also Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, his face like change from being like so worried to like, oh my gosh, like I'm home. And it's so beautiful. Also, Cosmo is definitely a good dog. And if you
disagree with me, I will fight you in the comments.
All right, friends, I think that's all I have to say because I've said too much already. Thank you for listening to me ramble. I hope you enjoyed this review. Really, it's just a rambling of thoughts that tumble out of my head. But I hope you enjoyed that tumbling of thoughts. Thanks for joining me. Stay nerdy. I'll see you in the next one. And if you like, do all the YouTube things. Also, go check out my Twitch where I stream things sometimes. Maybe we'll play some more Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, that's it. Bye.